Hello, everyone, and welcome to the online live doc show. I'm so grateful to be here, and I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. This is only our second call that we've had this year, but I'm just so excited to interview and speak with Dr. Monisha Bhanote. She is an amazing person. I tried to get her on our summits last year, so we chose 111, which is a great number for portal and energy and the new moon. So we are starting anew today with the new moon, and I want to interview Dr. Bhanote, and she's going to talk about some amazing topics around longevity and health and intentional health. So let's take a moment to welcome her before we step in.
Hi, thank you so much, Holly, for having me on today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, sounds so good. And, everybody had holiday challenges, and I know everybody's been coming into my clinic with I'm feeling exhausted. So all of these great, sort of intentional interviews right now are going to be so wonderful for you to think about. What is your intention stepping into 2024? So I don't know if Dr. Bhanote is the same way I am, but I don't necessarily believe in resolutions, right? So she's going to take you through some intentional healings and the knowledge that she has. So before we go forward, I'm going to just really connect you to where she's coming from, the type of physician she is, because she has such great experience. So let's talk a little bit about your bio. So Dr. Monisha Bhanote is an MD, FCAP, and ABOIM. What does that mean? It means she's an esteemed physician with quintuple medical board certifications, distinguishing her among the nation's luminaries in integrative medicine, functional culinary medicine, cytopathology, which I love, and anatomic clinical pathology. So she knows a lot about illness and diagnosis in the years she's been doing this. So her brainchild, which is Walkula, which I believe is her retreats, which we'll let her talk about, combines ancient wisdom with modern mind-body science to envision a path towards optimizing health and longevity. She is a proud alumna of Binghamton University, and she holds dual degrees in chemistry and Asian studies. Her medical journey saw her completing a demanding residency at NYU Winthrop University Hospital, followed by a coveted fellowships in cytopathology at Cornell, Breast, Bone, and Soft Tissue Cancer Center at the University of Rochester, and she esteemed Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine in Arizona. She's supplementing her core specialization. She's attained mindfulness-based stress reduction, plant-based nutrition, culinary medicine, and Ayurveda and yoga certifications. She's also a yoga medicine therapeutic specialist, where she underscores her dedication to holistic health that nurtures the mind, body, and spirit. This is like what we all need. And she's got a global footprint promoting transformative health paradigms with her website, which we will put on for you to actually be able to click over and connect with her. So she serves on various clinical advisory boards and spearheads wellness workshops and retreats worldwide. She's deeply invested in the confluence of nutrition and the microbiome, which many of you know is gut health. Her interests also encompasses cellular health, longevity, the intricate dance of stress and inflammation and disease, manifestation, and the promotion of daily mindfulness practices. Her focus extends to the proactive prevention of disease, which you all know that is my cup of tea. So let's go ahead and step right in so that you can talk and we can hear you. The audience hears me all the time. The title that she's stepping into is Your Blueprint for Vitality: Mastering Longevity and Cellular Health Through Intentional Lifestyle Practices. So Dr. Bhanote, can you tell us a little bit about the science of cellular health and longevity so we can get individuals up to speed on the live?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Holly, for the introduction. And, I think what it comes down to is people don't realize it's what you do most of the time, not some of the time, that is going to influence your health and well-being and ultimately your longevity overall. And this is why I spent years putting together not just the science of what's happening to the human body on a cellular level, but I also wanted it to be very relatable and understandable that the food you put on your plate, the way you move your body, the way you optimize your sleep or not optimize your sleep, the way you have relationships, all of that is influencing what's going on down to the cellular level and how your cells are communicating with each other. And we'll definitely dive into a little bit of it as much as we can, but I will give myself my own little plug that 95,000 words and over 300 references in the anatomy of well-being will really help you kind of break it down into each of the core pillars of well-being that I really want you to create as your internal compass. And like you were saying, a lot of people came back from the holidays and they just feel so exhausted and they're like, they don't know what to do. And so much so that we are actually seeing a rise in people canceling their doctor's appointments because they already have dived into their work life. And in that work life, they are just literally running on empty. And there's very little intentionality with how people are spending their days. This does not mean we all get up and quit our jobs. This means we take a moment to be mindful and present into what is it that we can do in order to get through our days in a happier, healthier way.
Exactly. Yeah. So true, because that's what I was saying about like resolutions. You can't just set another goal, create another task, dive into the new year, like Dr. Bhanote is saying, dive into the new year with your job when you probably took time off, and then create success around health. Like she mentioned, it takes intentional steps for us to journey through our healing process. So, what sorts of things do you work with your patient on to heal at the cellular level and to help them realize like we get to create change? Like you said, each and every day, but maybe 2024 is like, they're like, this is the year. But how do you walk your patients through that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. I don't believe in resolutions. I grew up doing resolutions every year, and just like everybody else, within a week, maybe 2 weeks, they were gone, right? We've all had the resolution where we sign up for the gym membership that now we can't get out of, or we start some new dietary plan and it quickly fails because of a work, holiday, whatever, birthday party, so for me, this is taking this concept not just of resolutions, but also our daily habits, which for me, habits always have a very negative connotation. It's always like, oh, this is such a bad habit. I need to give up this habit. And going into a place of what I call rituals, and I talk a lot about this in my book, is to start your new journey in well-being really by creating rituals. And habits, like I mentioned, have a very negative connotation with them. They have very little self-awareness, very little intention. They're basically automatic cues, like we get up, we see our coffee pot, we make our coffee, we move on, right? Or we drive somewhere and, oh, there's a drive-through, let me just do that because our eyes catch that and we go and do that. Whereas routines is kind of the middle ground between habits and rituals, where routines maybe have a little bit more self-awareness, maybe have a little bit more intention. Like that would be something like going to the gym, right? So you might be like, oh, let me put out my workout clothes. Let me do this meal prep. But what happens with those is people get very quickly burnt out and then they don't want to do them anymore.
Yeah.
And they don't know why they were doing them in the first place, because for somebody who does not like running, all of a sudden you're like, I need to run 10 miles a week. I do not like running. My body does not like running. So why would I do that? Right. So this is what we're doing. And then whereas rituals, this is really prioritizing what is important for you at this time and period in your life, and going, all right, I'm going to create maybe a morning ritual where I need 10 minutes in the morning to just stretch my body because my body feels really stiff and achy when I wake up. Or I need 10 minutes in the evening to recalibrate before I join my family. And the good thing about rituals is you don't fail at them because they are flexible. They are not rigid, like, oh, I need to do this and When I don't do it, I feel bad about myself. Rituals are meant to be very flexible and go with the flow of how your life is. You kind of wake up and be like, oh, this would be great for this day, or this week is a very busy week that at work, and I might not have time to do these things. So maybe I'm going to place rituals throughout the week that I have time to recalibrate my own mind and body, and that's why I love thinking of the way we live our life very intentionally, because rituals have the highest degree of self-awareness and the highest degree of intention that you place behind them. And like I said, you don't feel like you failed at them. And you could change them throughout the year, throughout the week, throughout the month.
Yeah, I love this conversation because, calling it rituals, that's fantastic. And it's, when I think of what we're talking about here, I'm thinking also of the fact that what Dr. Bhanote was saying, like, you can change them. So I know for me, I need 3 hours every morning before I start seeing patients. So I'm an early riser, early to bed. I have my ritual, which I shared with all of you, and a lot of it is grounding and being intentional for my day. Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What does that get to look like? Right. And so that sets me up in my ways of being and how I want to feel. So I see that as a ritual. And then I'm not stepping in, like jumping out of bed, grabbing a shower, not eating breakfast. You know what I mean? And like she said, they can be changed. So you can base it on like what works for you as an individual. And how does that actually affect like longevity? Because I know we want to talk about longevity and that energy like connected to cellular. Like, how can that change like the brain, the gut, and the longevity around the cellular setup?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question, right? So when we are looking at the long-lived populations, right? Like I think for now, most people are really familiar with the blue zones that really highlight the role of lifestyle and diet and all these things. Like, you're intentionally spending time with this community, you're intentionally doing physical activity. They might not use the word ritual, but there is a lot of ritual in what they are doing.
That's right.
And it's not just about like that longevity part comes in because when you are doing these practices, you are able to really manage the way you might approach stress. There's no way we're going to get rid of stress. The more modern the world becomes, the more stress we are going to have. So unless you're able to implement tools that are specific to you on how you manage stress, like I know how I manage stress. And you can't expect everybody to be like, oh, well, I'm going to go meditate. For some people, that will make them more stressed, right? Mm-hmm. So we really have to start paying attention to how our body works and tuning in. And that's that self-awareness. Once you listen to your body, and I always say, like, what's that have to do with cellular health? Well, when you pay attention to what your body is saying to you, any symptom you have is basically an expression of your cells being angry at you. And so if you are feeling like you have a headache, or you're feeling fatigued, or you're feeling bloated, that is your cells on a deeper level communicating with you that there is something off and that some change needs to happen, because the cells are essentially what I call angry cells. And we don't want angry cells. We want happy cells that allow our body to move with ease, pain-free, energetic.
Yeah, and energetically, when you're happy, kind of like what she said, I'm summing it up, but when you're happy and joyful, your cells are happy and joyful. When you're sad and depressed, or, or like high stress, your cells get that hit. And then on another level, if we talk about like, if you feel comfortable jumping into the nutrition piece around the mind, body, the energy, and then the nutrition that provides us to feel healthy, and how the cells and how that gut brain microbiome is connected, because I see that just so much of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if we look at the big core pillars, right? Like diet, I don't believe in diets. I believe in nutritionally feeding yourself. I love food. I think we should all love food, but most people aren't eating food anymore. So, diet is definitely one thing. And we'll definitely dive into that a lot deeper, but exercise, right? So we are spending most of our days sitting. When we are sitting all day and we are not getting the physical activity that we need, guess what? We are decreasing our telomere length. Telomeres are the little end caps on the end of our chromosomes when cells are dividing continuously, which is what is happening. Our telomeres are getting shortened and shortened. So we are aging quicker and quicker. So how do you not age as quick? You move your body. What are the people in the blue zones doing? They are moving their body, right? So it also allows you to movement also allows you to reduce the number of cells, cellular, like the ones that are kind of malfunctioning, abnormal, the proteins that aren't optimal, right? So any kind of activity, like I said, we tend to go in the beginning of the new year from I'm not doing any activity to I have a gym membership and I'm going to every class. And how quickly does that end? Instead, I want you to think of something that's sustainable, and that might be a 10-minute walk to get you started every day. And you might be like, well, I'm not going to lose the weight that I want to lose with. No, it's the consistency. It's what you do most of the time, not some of the time. So just like the weekend warrior workouts or the one salad a week is not going to make a difference. It's what you're doing most of the time. 100%. Right. So we also mentioned stress management, and there's definitely different tools you can use for that. And meditation does not have to be your tool. But at the end of the day, that chronic stress is going to negatively impact your telomere length. So the way your DNA is functioning, the way that your DNA is replicating, the way your cells are ultimately functioning, chronic stress will do that. I'm in a group of, as physicians, we're all in these physician Facebook groups. And I see these conversations about, oh, yeah, my husband had this and this happened. And I'm like, but wait a minute, you're a physician. You're not telling him he doesn't need to suffer through this? Or he and I'm like, and it's just become acceptable that, oh, you get sick, you take a medication, you die, and then we move on. No. That is not acceptable conversation anymore, because there's so much we actually have control over that we kind of just pass off to just throw our hands up in the air, right? And then, of course, quality sleep. People aren't sleeping the way they used to because of all our access and addiction to technology. I love my sleep, right? So sleep is critical for cellular repair, maintenance of proper cells for them to function. And when you think of this, there's a cumulative effect, right? So in that cumulative effect is where we're talking about having those small, consistent lifestyle changes can make a difference. It's the accumulation. So it's not the one-timer, but if you look at the cumulative effect of what a standard American diet, a standard American sedentary lifestyle does for individuals, this is why we have 1 in 4 people with chronic diseases by the time they're 30 years old. This is why people are on medications reminder, medications are going to address your symptoms. If you continue with that lifestyle, your body will continue to deteriorate. Medications do not stop your body from deteriorating.
Yeah, so it's so important to create change. And then I know you talk a lot with your patients from our conversation about personalizing and what that looks like for them. So would you share with the audience, because I say it my way, because they've heard how I work with them, as like personalizing your lifestyle plan. How does that look like for you? Like maybe like run down when someone comes to your clinic, chronic disease, they're on medications, maybe kind of take somebody through a journey so that they get a feeling of like the way you clinically practice as an MD, however, how you bring in the functional medicine piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So for my practice, when new patients come in, we're really looking at their entire journey, like, whether it's 45 years that brought them to the day that they're sitting in front of me versus 60 years versus 11 years, like I have a full spectrum of age of patients. And we're looking at what has happened over the course of that time. And some people don't realize that these simple bumps, aches, falls, antibiotics, whatever it might be, contributed to their presentation for the day, right? So we spend a lot of time on that. And then I really want to know, what are you doing in your 24 hours of a day? You'd be surprised that, like, when people have to sit down and look at what they're doing in 24 hours, that
Right.
they are not able to sustain their 24 hours because, one, they're overfed, undernourished,
Yeah.
over sedentary. Their body is essentially angry, right? So when I say cells are angry, so really I want you to remember this: hashtag cell care is self-care. I really want you to focus on cellular health for your body. And so I have numerous medical board certifications, and one of them is really in clinical laboratory testing. As a pathologist, as a clinical pathologist, we are the ones who validate the tests that are available. So I spend a lot of time diving deep into laboratory testing, whether that's looking at micronutrient testing or a lot on the gut microbiome, because most people's gut microbiomes are far from optimal. And with a focus on that, really building up their cellular function and looking at it from a perspective of what are they doing in their lifestyle and what do they enjoy doing. Because if you really dig deep, like, I have some people who really have things they enjoy, they just don't spend the time doing it. And then we have to dig into why. What's preventing you from doing that now? Is there something we can assist you with? And I really think the details in the testing, when people are like, oh, well, I do eat, I am eating this. And I'm like, well, if you're eating, your body is literally, not your body, but your cells. And I go through my little cell diagram with them, and we explain all the functions of what each of the cells core components are doing. But when your cells aren't getting the ingredients they need, they become dysfunctional. And that's where those symptoms come in.
Yeah.
And we do this, we break it down by different parts over 6 months. And I basically tell my patients, I'm putting you through med school on your specific body in 6 months. You will understand how your body works. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's so amazing because I love what you're doing, because so many people walk into our fields, and I just had a patient the other day and she said, how long will it take to heal me? Right? And like you're saying, it depends on the years and the layers and the energy and how you've treated your body. It even goes down to like your relationships, right? And your leadership. So can you talk a little bit about how empowering your leadership is so important for your health?
Yeah, absolutely. In order to be an effective leader, no matter what role you are, whether you are C-suite, like I often think about this when I'm like traveling and really being observant of what's going on with like the airline pilot and, just all these different things going on in the world, and how you want all of these individuals who you see on a daily basis to be as healthy as possible in order for you to stay safe. Right? So, whether it's the train conductor or the person sitting in an office over here who's managing your bank accounts, I'm always thinking about these people and going, in order to be an organization and have that effective leadership, we want to make sure not only the leader is demonstrating personal well-being and optimal well-being, but also that they are bringing it down within their organization. So everybody, whatever level that they're working on, because every person touches another person in some way, right? So just like your cells need to communicate with each other, you as individuals are communicating. And we, at the end of the day, are a big cellular cosm of beings, right? So we're all very interconnected. So I think really fostering this culture of health within an organization is really important for leaders to look at. I know, like, anybody who's worked with me in a hospital in the last 25 years knows I'm the person who will always be bringing in the green juice. If there's a birthday party, I will have something that's more healthful. And or even if I'm going to an event, like, I'll always make sure that I have a meal that's prepared. Everybody's like, oh, what's that? it creates not only that curiosity, but then when they try it, they're like, I can do that. Why am I eating this like pizza over here when I could have had this delivered, you know? And it's really leading by example. And then taking a moment to recognize, how do you feel as an individual when you are healthier? How are you more productive? How are you able to think clear? Or maybe some task that took you 6 hours to do, now you can do in half the time because you are more focused on it, right? So I think really it's about not just the leaders, but it's about empowering your team to think in this way, ultimately enhancing that productivity and really cultivating a supportive environment. I know when I take my team out and we're going to dinner, and I'm like, we're picking a restaurant where, I want them to be exposed to things that they might not have thought of before. And they're like, oh, I can do this. Like, we only know what we know based off of what we've been exposed to. So this is really about exposure and going, all right, this is not as scary as I thought it was, right. which is where, I bring people into my cooking classes and my retreats, and I'm exposing them to experiences where, they were like, oh, I'm not sure about this. And then the feeling they get after it, they're like, oh, I can do this, right? So it's about experiencing something.
Yeah, and I love when you talk about the retreats, because one of the things, or even like when we go to events as physicians, I don't know if you run across this yourself, but it really like almost agitates me that when we show up and they're like, yeah, we're going to give you food, we're going to provide you like, your meals, and you have to worry about them. I'll be honest, I don't eat that food. Like, it's often has cheese in it and corn in it, and there's not enough greens or vegetables. And my patients know I tell them eat 12 varying types of vegetables a day, and the protein is often not quality grass-fed or wild protein if you need protein. So we're feeding our mind and our body. So if like she's saying, is if you eat that way and then you go to learn, like, how can you focus very well? Or the physicians that go out afterwards and they go and have alcohol, I have no judgment, but how can they really think in the morning and be clear? And that's what I'm thinking from the leader level for us. Like, that's so challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a matter of, you're always going to have that depending on who the sponsor is and what their understanding is. But that's where at that leadership level you get involved. I know at my one of my previous organizations, I was actually I was on the board of directors, and when it came to menus for our quarterly meetings, they had to be run by me. And so I would make sure that, all right, we were able to have something accessible for everybody to enjoy, but at the same time, as healthcare providers, stay within our healthy spectrum.
Yeah, totally. Now, can you lastly like talk a little bit about what your retreats looks like? So people that are interested in retreats, because I know I've been to several different kinds of retreats, and people hear retreats thrown around, and there's very different levels and what that kind of looks like, because that's a big core of like really what you promote. Is that correct?
Well, it is definitely a part of it, because for me, it's, I have multiple levels of my business. I have the medical clinic for the people who really need that in-depth testing and a specific protocol. But, and then I also have the lifestyle design lab, where it's kind of that everyday ritual making, cooking classes, and really kind of creating your community where you have people to lean on. But then I'm a big traveler, right? So I love retreats. I've attended over 40 retreats. And there was always something missing in the retreat experience for me, that I'm like, you know what, I will just have retreats that are more aligned to not just, even though I am a yoga teacher, not just doing yoga and then coming back and not like just having that isolated 1 week long experience. I want this to be a life-changing experience for you, where then you're like, oh, I can incorporate these practices, whatever they might be. My next retreat is a longevity retreat. It's the Biohack Your Gut, Mind, and Soul retreat in 2024. And it's open to both men and women. So I've had couples come to these retreats. I've had single people come to these retreats. And it's really based off of getting in tune with how your body works on a cellular level, incorporating that ancient wisdom. So, it's themed on some of the Ayurvedic principles. And then also being able to try some of the newer technology that is available out there to really take your cells to a next level. So even if this is like new to you, so if people are looking at, oh, should I get an infrared sauna? Should I get a cold plunge? Sometimes before you spend some money, you might want to try it to be like, do I, it's kind of like the same thing. Everybody buys a treadmill and it becomes like a clothing rack,
That's right.
for your clothes, right? So it's the same premise of you have to try something to see how your body feels on it and then go, this is a great investment for my health and well-being.
Yeah, so great. And then you do them in the same place every year, or do you move around?
Next year, this 2024 is in Mexico, but we do have other locations, international locations coming up, which I cannot reveal just yet. But yes.
Oh, no, that's fine. No, that's fine.
We do have some international beyond Mexico coming up.
Oh, that's awesome. So is there anything else that we didn't hit on that like you're like really people need to think about this in their life, and really with all the great work that you do, and all your knowledge and the different levels and layers that you're teaching individuals and healing?
I think, I mean, we've kind of just touched the surface of it. I think, when I look at food and when I'm looking at ingredients, it's interesting. Before this call, I was going over a microbiome test on a patient, and this is really looking at your microbiome on the genetics of the microbiome. So not just your microbiome, but what are your bacteria that you have in there? Are they producing GABA? Are they producing, short chain fatty acids? What are they actually doing? And I'm looking at this test and I'm going, oh my goodness, this is absolutely amazing. But people have no understanding or comprehension of it. And I do find that there is great value in testing if you have a practitioner who understands how to interpret it. And then also, you can't just like, there's so many tests on the market. You can't just do tests and do nothing about it. That's where having a community, whether it's, your community with Simple Health or mine with Well Cool and the Lifestyle Design Lab, it's really about having a community where you have people to lean into to take the next steps. Because at the end of the day, none of us do this alone. We can't
Speak for myself. When you go online and you have community, it's really that connection that helps support the accountability, that really helps you take your health to the next level. And that even goes to like what you were talking about earlier with the blue zones, that people are healthier and happier in what they're eating, and most of them are in communities helping one another, loving one another. And I think, or I know, a big part of in the US, you're in New York, right? And the big part of the US, it's like, it's one for all and fend for yourself. And, I miss those days of like, I remember when we were kids and we would share, like, bring over like food to our neighbors or vice versa. And it was whole nutrient dense food. And it wasn't like the processed foods, like my neighbor lived to 102. How often does that happen now, right? Mm-hmm. Because of the processed foods. And when you're talking about the genetics and the gut microbiome, it's so amazing when you start digging into your genetics, because we know so much more about it. And then you become empowered and you're like, that's why I don't feel good on eating this, or that's why, you were able to connect the dots. But really the truth is the processed foods out there, I don't know if you would talk about it, like they just like, I'll let you go with it, but it's just horrible on the gut.
Yeah. So without getting into what is the best diet wars, because,
Exactly.
like the last thing I like to do is stress out my cells. So let's just keep my cells happy. But at the end of the day, I think everybody can agree that processed foods that are coming out of boxes that we have names that we can't even pronounce the names, are not doing anything good for our body and are essentially harming our cellular health.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't even try and pronounce the names. Okay. Yeah. But if they're coming out of packaging, Think about it. The number of food additives that are put in children's foods by the time they, if you pay attention as a mother, when they go from breastfed and baby food to now school food, there is a change in the way your child behaves.
Right.
Pay attention to what that child is eating, right? So processed food, we can all agree, is a no. Fast food, there are so many chemicals that are in our quick delivery foods that are showing up on people's doorsteps. Now, you can pick up the phone or go on your app, order something, and you don't even know what's in it. Forget about the ingredients that are in it, the amount of unhygienic stuff going on behind kitchens. I mean, I've been in kitchens. I'm like, instantly you can see why people get sick off of eating food delivery. And it's like just learning how to make some of this simple stuff at home. You'd be surprised how drastically your health can change in such a positive way. And it doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to be time consuming. And it doesn't need to be complicated. Like it's simple, really quite simple. And then really looking at what is accessible. I understand the food deserts, and you go to different parts of the country, and you can go into a store and they just don't have access to it. But I know I was talking to this one mom the other day. She's like, she wanted to prioritize her children's Christmas gifts and making sure they had a Christmas over them eating healthy. So instead, she was feeding them nachos and ground beef for the week, which to me is going, you aren't going to really have healthy, happy kids if that's what you're feeding them is fried chips and ground up beef every single day just to get through the holidays, because the holidays bring on extra expenses. Right. So I want you to look at this not from this immediate gratification life we have, but more from this long, happy life that we could possibly have if we start looking at the big picture. And ultimately, it's that quick fix that people want, and a quick fix never worked for anybody. And you can quick fix your way right into the hospital. Mm-hmm. And that's going to give you a new experience, because the last place you want to end up is through hospital doors, because that will really change your budget.
Totally. Yeah. And that circles back to what you were saying earlier. Like there's a time and a place for medicine, but if you, like, I call it a pill for an ill, and some people have a challenge that I say that, but it's really true. Like there's a time and a place. Yes, there's emergency if I get hit by a truck. But like what Dr. Bhanote is talking about is like what I talk about. It's the steps that you take, that you put into your budgets, that you put into your rituals, that you really get to create whole health for yourself and your families. And she also mentioned, like, summing up, like, people, like if she brings things to different meetings or she takes her staff out or whatever, like really showing from your external environment something that you've never seen, or talk about something and share the healthy food instead of stay in the stress response. And all those different layers of sharing and community, bring health. But I always say, think about what your grandmother and great grandmother made in the kitchen. They didn't pick up the phone and dial, like, I don't know, whatever the names are. I don't even order out on those. So I don't even know what is one, like Uber Eats or something like that. And like she said, like kitchens, yes, it could say farm to table, but are you really getting the healthy food that you need after you meet with her and she goes through the whole protocol, and then you end up stepping back into junk food? That's even worse for your cells. I tell patients, when they step backwards, it takes us twice as time to get them forward again. Mm-hmm. So I just thank you for the work that you're doing. And I know you showed up and mentioned that you wanted to give the audience a free gift, and I'm going to drop it in the comments. You want to talk a little bit about that before we close, and then some with like whatever your heart center is on right now?
Sure, absolutely. I think if I remember correctly, the free gift was my 20 recipes that, okay, perfect. All right. So that's my cell care plate recipes. So these are 20 plant-based, gluten-free recipes that have been actually cooked in cooking kitchens by non-plant-based, gluten-free eaters. And they are definitely the winner of the winners of quite a few of my very well-known gluten-free chocolate chip gut healthy cookie is in there. So you definitely want that recipe, because if you're making weekly chocolate chip cookies, because this is the one you want for your gut. So yeah, I mean, I think my message really is, your well-being is non-negotiable, and we really need to focus on cellular health. And the way we do that is hashtag self-care is self-care. And you can definitely dive deeper into more about the rituals and the science behind which ones you might want to incorporate in my book, The Anatomy of Wellbeing, available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all retail booksellers. And that's different from the cookbook, which is a free gift. But just if you see it, it's a green book, The Anatomy of Wellbeing. And yes, that's really it. I mean, I really wish everybody a good journey in this 2024. I think just waking up and paying attention to what you need. And I don't want to say that, like some people say self-care is selfish. Well, sorry, but self-care is not selfish. Self-care is exactly what you need to be a better human, provide to society, a better leader, and ultimately a better friend, family member, and whatever you're working on.
I love that closure, because it's so true. If you don't love yourself and stand up for yourself and take care of yourself, then how can you be what God put you on this earth to be, or whatever your higher being is? And how can you show up as your true authentic self, you hear many people say, or who you want to be and who you want to show up, if you're not doing self-care, taking time to decrease the stress levels, taking time to be aware of the foods that you're eating? Like Dr. Bhanote talked about, rituals instead of, other solutions or habits. Like, what is that intentional ritual that you can change right now after we hang up and we move in our directions? Like, what's one thing that you can change today after connecting and hearing our interview? So I really so appreciate you and just all the work, because there's so many of us just working to heal chronic disease. And it's not about working, but it's us showing up and messaging like this. And, we never get our time back. So please take a moment, whether you're live with us or it's after the recording, and just show appreciation to Dr. Bhanote, because our time is of essence and it's so important. And it's the only thing that we never get back. So I'm sending you all so much love, a happy new year. And thank you again for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.